Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the U.S. Liberty, watching the stars through the main viewport. The diplomatic mission to the Centauri Republic had gone better than expected. 3 new trade agreements and a mutual defense pact were now secured in the ship's databanks. The 6-month journey home to Earth would give him time to prepare his reports for the Colonial Council. The bridge was quiet, except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. Navigation Officer Lisa Park monitored their course through the Kepler passage, while Communications Specialist Danny Wright handled routine traffic control messages. Morrison had commanded the Liberty for 8 years, and this crew felt like family to him. They had visited 47 different worlds together, building bridges between humanity and dozens of alien species. "Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission on all frequencies," Wright called out from his station. His voice carried an unusual tension that made Morrison turn around. "All frequencies, you said?" "Yes, sir. Every communication channel we monitor is carrying the same signal. It's being broadcast across the entire galaxy." Morrison felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. Galaxy-wide broadcasts were extremely rare and usually meant something terrible was happening. The last time he had heard of such a transmission was during the Rigel Plague outbreak 15 years ago. "Put it on the main screen," Morrison ordered. View screen flickered and showed something that made the entire bridge crew freeze. A tall, pale creature with 4 arms and glowing red eyes stared at them. Its skin looked like polished metal, and strange symbols glowed across its forehead. The creature's mouth barely moved when it spoke, but its voice filled the bridge with mechanical precision. "Species of the 3rd planet of Sol System," the alien began. "You call yourselves humans. Your rapid expansion across this sector of space ends now." Morrison exchanged glances with his officers. None of them had ever seen this species before. The alien's appearance was unsettling, but its tone was what really worried him. There was no emotion in the voice, no attempt at diplomacy or negotiation. "I am Overseer Vexthel of the Hegemony. For 3,000 years, we have maintained order in this galaxy. We have watched your species spread like a plague across star systems that do not belong to you. This ends today." The alien paused, and its red eyes seemed to look directly through the screen at Morrison. "You have constructed colonies on 43 worlds. You have established trade routes through 17 sectors. You have made contact with 29 inferior species and filled their minds with your primitive ideas of freedom and independence." Park leaned over to Morrison and whispered, "Sir, how do they know our exact expansion numbers?" "Some of those colonies are classified." Morrison held up his hand for silence. The alien was still speaking, and he needed to hear every word. "The hegemony has decided that your species represents a threat to galactic stability. You will immediately cease all expansion activities. You will withdraw from every world beyond your origin system. You will dismantle your colonies and return every human to the Sol System within 30 rotations." Wright was frantically taking notes, recording every detail of the transmission. Morrison could see his hands shaking as he wrote. "Furthermore," Vexthel continued, "your species will submit to hegemony authority. Your governments will be dissolved. Your military forces will be disbanded. Your people will serve the hegemony in whatever capacity we determine is appropriate." The alien leaned forward slightly, and Morrison could see rows of sharp teeth when it spoke again. "This is not a negotiation. This is not a request. This is an order. You have 30 rotations to comply completely. If you refuse, if you resist, if you attempt to hide even a single human beyond the Sol System, we will exterminate your entire species." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Morrison stared at the blank screen, trying to process what he had just heard. 30 rotations meant 30 days by standard galactic time. 1 month for all of humanity to abandon everything they had built over the past century. Right. Get me a direct channel to Earth Command. Immediately, Morrison ordered, priority alpha encryption. While Wright worked to establish the connection, Morrison paced the bridge, the hegemony. He had never heard of them before, but their knowledge of human activities suggested they had been watching for a long time. How many species had received similar ultimatums over the centuries? How many had simply vanished without anyone knowing why? "Sir, I have President Martinez on the line," Wright announced. The main screen now showed the Oval Office on Earth. President Lisa Martinez sat behind her desk, but Morrison could see she was not alone. Admiral Greg Turner stood to her right, along with several other officials Morrison recognized from previous diplomatic missions. "Captain Morrison," President Martinez began, "I assume you received the transmission." "Yes, Madam President." "My entire crew witnessed it. We've been receiving similar reports from every human ship and colony in space." The message was broadcast simultaneously across all our territories. Martinez looked tired, as if she had aged years in the past few hours. "Admiral." Turner stepped forward. "Captain, we need you to change course immediately. Set course for the Titan shipyards at maximum speed." "We're recalling every ship in the fleet," Morrison nodded. "Understood, Admiral." "What's our response going to be?" Martinez and Turner exchanged a look that Morrison did not like. Finally, the President spoke again. "We're still evaluating our options, Captain. The alien fleet strength appears to be massive. Our intelligence reports suggest they have thousands of ships positioned around human space." "With respect, Madam President," Morrison said, "but it sounds like you're considering surrendering." The silence that followed his statement was answer. Enough. Morrison felt something cold and angry building in his chest. He thought about all the worlds he had visited, all the families who had left Earth to build new lives among the stars. He thought about the children playing in the parks on New Dakota, the farmers on Haven Falls who had turned barren worlds into gardens, the miners on asteroid base Omega who had worked in dangerous conditions to fuel humanity's expansion. "Captain," Admiral Turner said carefully, "we have to consider the survival of our species. If this hegemony has the power they claim, resistance might mean the extinction of every human being in the galaxy." Morrison looked around his bridge at his crew. Park was watching him with steady eyes. Wright had stopped taking notes and was listening intently. Even Chief Engineer Bob Phillips had come up from the engine room and was standing in the doorway. "Admiral," Morrison said slowly, "has anyone verified that these aliens actually have the power they claim? Or are we just taking their word for it?" Before Turner could answer, Wright interrupted. "Sir, we're receiving another transmission. This one is from the Colonial Council on New Washington." "Put it through," Martinez ordered. The screen split to show Governor Pete Walsh of New Dakota Colony. His face was grim, but Morrison could see determination in his eyes that had not been there in the President's expression. "Madam President." "Admiral Turner," Walsh began, "I'm speaking for 17 colonial governors. We've been discussing the hegemony ultimatum, and we have reached a unanimous decision." Walsh paused and looked directly into the camera. "We didn't leave Earth to build new worlds, just so we could run back home at the first sign of trouble. Our people didn't risk everything to expand humanity across the stars, just to give up when someone threatens us." Morrison felt a surge of pride listening to the colonial governor. This was the humanity he knew, the species that had reached for the stars despite every obstacle. "What are you saying, Governor?" President Martinez asked. Walsh's answer was simple and clear. "We're saying that we don't kneel to anyone, Madam President. Not to aliens, not to threats, and not to fear. If this hegemony wants our worlds, they'll have to take them by force." The transmission ended, and Morrison saw something change in President Martinez's expression. The fear was still there, but now it was mixed with something else. Pride, perhaps, or determination. Admiral Turner was checking reports on his tablet. Madam President, we're receiving similar messages from colonies throughout human space. They're refusing to evacuate. Martinez was quiet for a long moment. Finally, she looked directly at Morrison through the screen. Captain, I want you to relay a message to every human ship, station, and colony in space. Yes, Madam President. Martinez stood up behind her desk, and Morrison could see the leader who had guided humanity through its greatest period of expansion. Tell them that the United Earth government stands with its people. Tell them that we built our civilization on the principle that every human being has the right to determine their own fate. She paused, and Morrison could see her hands were steady now. And tell them that Earth's official response to the hegemony ultimatum is this: we kneel to no one. Captain Ryan Brooks was drinking his morning coffee when the alarms started screaming throughout. Defense Station Haven 1. The orbital platform hung in space above the peaceful farming world of Haven Falls, home to 2 million colonists who had turned the planet into humanity's breadbasket. Brooks had commanded the small defense fleet here for 3 years, and the most excitement they usually saw was helping lost cargo ships find their way. Captain, we have multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace, called Lieutenant Sam Garcia from the sensor station. His voice was tight with disbelief. Sir, I'm reading over 300 ships. Brooks nearly dropped his coffee mug. 300 ships was more than the entire human defense fleet combined. He rushed to the main display and felt his blood turn cold. The screen showed massive alien vessels, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. They moved in perfect formation, surrounding Haven Falls like predators circling prey. Get me Admiral Turner on Earth immediately, Brooks ordered. But even as he spoke, he knew help would not arrive in time. Earth was 6 days away at maximum speed, and these alien ships had already positioned themselves between his station and any possible escape route. The communication system crackled to life without any input from his crew. The same pale alien from the galaxy-wide broadcast appeared on their screens. Overseer Vexthol looked directly at Brooks with those glowing red eyes. Human defenders of this world, the alien said in that emotionless voice, you have chosen to ignore our ultimatum. Your species was given 30 rotations to withdraw. Instead, you have remained and prepared for conflict. Brooks stepped forward toward the screen. His small fleet of 12 patrol ships was nothing compared to the armada surrounding them. But he had sworn an oath to protect the people of Haven Falls. This is Captain Ryan Brooks of the Human Defense Force. You are in violation of interstellar law by threatening civilian populations. Vexthol tilted its head slightly, as if studying an interesting insect. Your laws mean nothing to the hegemony. Your resistance means nothing. Your existence means nothing. The alien raised one of its 4 arms, and Brooks could see some kind of control device in its hand. You will witness the price of defying the hegemony. Your species will learn that some orders must be obeyed. The transmission ended, and immediately Brooks could see the alien fleet beginning to move. The massive ships descended toward Haven Falls like a dark cloud, their weapons already charging with energy that made the space around them shimmer. All ships, this is Brooks, he broadcast to his small fleet. Form defensive pattern Alpha around the station. We're going to buy the evacuation shuttles as much time as possible. Lieutenant Commander Amy Davis commanded the patrol ship Hughes Guardian, one of the 12 vessels under Brooks' command. She had grown up on Haven Falls before joining the military, and her parents still lived in the capital city below. As she watched the alien ships approaching, she knew this would be the last fight of her life. Guardian to all ships, she transmitted. For everyone down there, for every family on the surface, we make our stand here. The hegemony attack began without warning. Beams of purple energy lanced out from the alien ships, striking Brooks' vessels with devastating force. The patrol ship U.E.'s Defender exploded instantly, its crew of 42 dying in a flash of light. The U.E.'s Ranger tried to return fire, but its weapons barely scratched the alien hull plating. Brooks gripped his command chair as his station shook under enemy fire. Through the viewport, he could see the alien fleet had split into two groups. Half were engaged with his pathetic defense force, while the other half descended toward the planet's surface. On Haven Falls, civilian administrator Kate Phillips was coordinating the evacuation from the capital city of New Portland. She had been born on Earth, but had spent 15 years turning this world into a home for millions of farmers and their families. The communication systems were filled with panicked voices as people tried to find their loved ones and reach the evacuation points. All citizens proceed to designated shelters immediately. Phillips broadcast across the city's emergency network. This is not a drill. Alien forces are approaching the surface. The sky above New Portland began to darken as the hegemony ships blocked out the sun. Phillips could see people running through the streets, carrying children and whatever possessions they could grab. The evacuation transports were loading as fast as possible, but there were not enough ships to carry everyone. 8-year-old Lucy Chan stood with her mother outside their farmhouse, 20 miles from the city. They could see the alien ships in the distance, moving slowly across the landscape. Lucy's mother, Dr. Ellen Chun, was one of the agricultural scientists who had developed the crops that made Haven Falls so productive. "Mommy, why are the ships so big?" Lucy asked, not understanding the terror in her mother's eyes. Ellen Chun picked up her daughter and started running toward the vehicle. She had received the evacuation order 30 minutes ago, but their transport had not arrived. Through the emergency radio, she could hear reports of alien ground troops landing near the major city's dot in space above. Captain Brooks watched helplessly as the first alien ground forces began landing on Haven Falls. His fleet was down to 7 ships, and his weapons were having no effect on the enemy vessels. The U's Guardian, commanded by Amy Davis, was badly damaged but still fighting. "Brooks to all remaining ships," he transmitted. "We've hurt them more than they expected. Keep fighting." It was not entirely true. The human weapons had managed to damage several alien ships, but not destroy any of them. Still, Brooks could see that the hegemony had expected even less resistance. Their formations were tight, suggesting they had not planned for any real opposition. Amy Davis pushed her damaged ship toward the largest alien vessel, a massive dreadnought that was coordinating the ground assault. Her weapons were offline, her shields were gone, and her crew was down to 15 people. But her ship still had engines, and her heart was still beating. "Guardian to Defense Station Haven 1, she transmitted. "Tell my parents I love them." The U's Guardian struck the alien dreadnought at full speed, its reactor core detonating on impact. The explosion tore a massive hole in the enemy ship's hull and sent it spinning out of control. It was the first real damage the humans had inflicted, and Brooks felt a moment of fierce pride even as his heart broke. But the victory was short-lived. The remaining hegemony ships turned their full attention to the human defense force. One by one, Brooks watched his ships die. The U.E.S. Sentinel, the U.E.S. Watchman, the U.E.S. Protector. Each explosion took 40 to 50 human lives, people who had chosen to fight rather than run. On the planet's surface, the alien ground assault had begun. The hegemony soldiers were not interested in taking prisoners or occupying territory. They moved through the city systematically, destroying everything they found. Buildings collapsed under their advanced weapons. Vehicles melted under directed energy beams. And the people, The 2 million farmers and families who had made Haven Falls their home died by the thousands. Kate Phillips was still coordinating evacuations when the alien soldiers reached New Portland. She could hear the sounds of destruction. Getting closer, the screams of people who had not reached the shelters in time. The last evacuation transport had left an hour ago, carrying 3,000 refugees toward the outer system. It was not nearly enough. The emergency center where Phillips worked was built underground, designed to survive natural disasters. But it was not designed to survive what the hegemony brought. The ceiling began to crack as alien weapons struck. The surface above. Dust fell like snow, and the lights flickered. This is Kate Phillips, Haven Falls Emergency Coordinator. She transmitted on all frequencies. The colony is lost. The hegemony is not taking prisoners. They are not occupying our world. They are destroying everything. Her transmission was picked up by refugee ships fleeing the system, by defense stations in neighboring sectors, and by the Emergency Command Center on Earth. President Martinez and Admiral Turner listened to her final report with growing horror. Aliens show no interest in our infrastructure, our resources, or our technology. Phillips continued as explosions shook her bunker. This is not conquest. This is extermination. The transmission ended in static as the emergency center collapsed. Dr. Ellen Chun and her daughter Lucy never reached an evacuation point. Their vehicle broke down 15 miles from New Portland, and they joined thousands of other families trying to reach safety on foot. When the alien soldiers found them, Lucy was playing with a flower she had picked from her mother's garden. The hegemony soldier looked down at the human child for a moment. Lucy smiled up at the alien, not understanding the danger. She held up the flower as if offering it as a gift. The soldier vaporized both mother and daughter with a single shot from its weapon. Similar scenes played out across Haven Falls as the hegemony demonstrated their version of mercy. Families hiding in root cellars were burned alive. Elderly people who could not run fast enough were cut down in the streets. Children's playgrounds became graveyards. Captain Brooks made his final stand alone aboard Defense Station Haven 1. His fleet was gone, his crew was dead, and the station systems were failing. Through the viewport, he could see the planet burning below. Admiral Greg Turner stood in the war room deep beneath the Colorado mountains, staring at the holographic display that showed the positions of 3 human battle fleets. After 18 months of hit-and-run attacks and desperate research, humanity was finally ready to strike back at the hegemony. The quantum disruption bombs developed by Dr. Carl Jensen's team were loaded aboard every ship, and intelligence gathered by Captain Jake Morrison's raids had revealed the locations of 3 major hegemony sector capitals. Operation Prometheus begins in 6 hours, Turner announced to the assembled fleet commanders. Captain Nina Foster will lead Battle Group Alpha against the industrial world of Goldfix 7. Captain Morrison commands Battle Group Beta, targeting the military academy. On Zurhan, I will personally lead Battle Group Gamma against Vex Nara Prime, the sector command center. The room fell silent as the enormity of what they were attempting sank in. For over a year, humanity had been losing this war. 17 colonies had been destroyed, millions of people were dead, and the hegemony fleets seemed unstoppable. But Dr. Jensen's breakthrough had changed everything. Captain Foster stepped forward, her face bearing scars from the battle that had destroyed her first. Command. Admiral, what are our casualty estimates? Turner's expression was grim. Conservative projections suggest we'll lose 70% of our forces. Optimistic estimates put it at 50%. But if we succeed, we'll prove that the hegemony can be hurt on their own worlds. On the research station, Deep Space Lab 7, Dr. Alice Thompson ran final checks on the quantum bombs while her mentor Dr. Jensen supervised. The devices looked deceptively simple. each one no larger than a briefcase, but they contained the power to unravel the quantum foundations that held hegemony technology together. "The theory is sound," Jensen told Thompson as they sealed the last bomb. "Their entire civilization relies on quantum field manipulation. These devices will cause cascade failures in their systems." Thompson nodded, but her hands were shaking slightly. She had joined the research project, hoping to find a way to save humanity through science. Now that same science was about to become a weapon of mass destruction. "Doctor, what if we're wrong about how their technology works?" Jensen was quiet for a moment, and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Alice, I've seen the footage from Haven Falls. I've watched the recordings from Kepler's Edge and Asteroid Base Omega. If we're wrong, then we die as soldiers instead of as victims. I can live with that choice." Battle Group Alpha departed from the hidden base at Titan, exactly on schedule. Captain Foster commanded the heavy cruiser UES Retribution, leading 42 ships toward the hegemony industrial world of Golfix 7. Her crew was a mix of regular Navy personnel and volunteers from the destroyed colonies, all united by their desire for revenge. Commander Bob Phillips, her chief engineer, had lost his entire family when the hegemony destroyed New Dakota Colony. He supervised the quantum bomb installation personally, checking every connection twice. "Captain, the weapon is ready for deployment. Dr. Jensen's calculations show it should cause a chain reaction across their entire orbital manufacturing network." Foster nodded and opened a channel to her fleet. "All ships, this is Retribution. In 30 minutes, we drop out of hyperspace in hostile territory. Remember what we're fighting for. Remember Haven Falls. Remember Kepler's Edge. Remember everyone. We've lost. Today, we show the galaxy that humanity fights back." Meanwhile, Captain Morrison led Battle Group Beta toward the military academy world of Zerhan. His flagship, the UES Vengeance, carried the most experienced crew in the human fleet. They had conducted 7 successful raids on hegemony facilities, gathering intelligence and rescuing prisoners when possible. Lieutenant Commander Danny Wright, now Morrison's operations officer, monitored the long-range sensors as they approached. "Their target, sir, we're detecting approximately 200 hegemony vessels in orbit around Zerhan. The Academy fleet is smaller than expected." Morrison studied the tactical display. "That could work in our favor. A concentrated target means our quantum bomb will have maximum effect. Signal the fleet to prepare for combat deployment." Admiral Turner's Battle Group Gamma was the largest of the 3 forces, consisting of 60 ships, including Earth's most powerful warships. Their target, Vexnara Prime, was the sector capital where Overseer Vexthul commanded the hegemony war. Effort against humanity. As they dropped out of hyperspace, Turner saw immediately that they faced the strongest resistance. Over 400 hegemony ships surrounded the heavily fortified world, and massive orbital weapons platforms bristled with energy cannons. "Admiral, we're being scanned by their defense network," reported his tactical officer. "They know we're here." Turner had expected this. Vexnara Prime was too important for the hegemony to leave lightly defended. "All ships, execute attack pattern Omega. We go in hard and fast. Deploy the quantum bomb, and get out before their reinforcements arrive." The 3 battles began simultaneously across different sectors of hegemony space. Captain Foster's fleet struck first, catching the industrial facilities of Golfix 7 during a shift change. The hegemony defenders responded quickly, but they were not prepared for the fury of human desperation. The UES Retribution plowed through the enemy formation, its weapons blazing. Foster had equipped her ships with every piece of captured hegemony, technology they could reverse engineer, and the combined firepower was devastating. 2 enemy cruisers exploded under concentrated fire before they could return effective shots. "Deploy the quantum bomb now," Foster ordered as her ship shook under. Enemy fire. Commander Phillips activated the device and launched it toward the largest orbital factory. The bomb seemed tiny compared to the massive hegemony structures, but within seconds of detonation, reality itself began to unravel around the industrial complex. The quantum cascade effect spread like wildfire through the interconnected hegemony systems. Factory modules simply ceased to exist as their quantum foundations collapsed. Entire production lines vanished into nothingness, leaving empty space where moments before there had been buildings and machinery. "My God," whispered Foster as she watched centuries of hegemony industrial capacity disappear. "It actually works, but the victory came at a terrible price." The hegemony fleet, realizing what was happening, launched a desperate counterattack. The U.E.'s Defender exploded under concentrated fire, taking 43 crew members with her. The U.E.'s Challenger lost her engines and began drifting helplessly toward the planet's gravity well. At Sirhan, Captain Morrison's attack had achieved complete tactical surprise. The military academy's defenses were designed to repel invasion, not the suicidal assault that Morrison's fleet launched. Human ships dove directly into the hegemony formation, accepting massive damage to get close enough for the quantum bomb to be effective. "Morrison to all ships," he broadcast as his flagships. Hull cracked under enemy fire. "Remember Admiral Turner's sacrifice at the Battle of Proxima. Remember Captain Davis at Haven Falls. Today we honor their memory." The quantum bomb detonated in the heart of the Academy's orbital complex, and Morrison watched in amazement as the most prestigious military institution in hegemony space simply vanished. Hundreds of years of military tradition and thousands of future hegemony officers ceased to exist in an instant. But Morrison's fleet paid dearly for their success. Only 18 of his original 35 ships survived the battle, and most of those were heavily damaged. His own ship, the U.E.'s Vengeance, was venting atmosphere from 12 hull breaches. The battle at Vexnara Prime was the most brutal of the 3 engagements. Admiral Turner faced overwhelming odds, but he pressed the attack with the determination of a man who had watched his species face extinction. The quantum bomb had to reach the planet's command center, no matter the cost. All ships ramming speed, Turner ordered as his fleet penetrated the inner defense perimeter. The hegemony was throwing everything they had at the human formation, and Turner's ships were dying one by one. The U.E.C. Constitution, Turner's flagship, took a direct hit from an orbital defense platform and began to break apart. Turner transferred his flag to the heavy cruiser U.E.S. Independence, but that ship was crippled minutes later by hegemony fighters. Finally, Turner made the decision that would define the rest of the war. He transferred to the fastest ship in his fleet, the destroyer U.E.'s Lightning, and loaded the quantum bomb personally. "This is Admiral Turner to all surviving ships. Cover my approach. Humanity is counting on us." The Lightning raced toward Vexnara Prime with the remaining human ships screening her approach. Turner could see Overseer Vexthal's command station, a massive structure that coordinated hegemony military operations across dozens of sectors. Hegemony Interceptor caught the Lightning just as Turner reached weapons range. The enemy ship's beam sliced through the destroyer's hull, killing half the crew instantly. But Turner was still alive, and the quantum bomb was still functional. "For Haven Falls," Turner whispered as he manually triggered the device. "For every human child they murdered. For every world they burned." The explosion consumed both ships, but it also achieved something the hegemony had thought impossible. Their sector command center, the nerve center of their war effort, vanished into quantum nothingness. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the U.E.S. Retribution, watching the largest fleet in human history prepare for the final assault on Nexus Prime. 2 years had passed since Admiral Turner's sacrifice at Vexnara Prime, and the galaxy had changed beyond recognition. What started as humanity's desperate fight for survival had become a war of liberation that spread across dozens of star systems. The Rebel Alliance stretched as far as Morrison could see through the main viewport. Ships from the Centauri Republic flew alongside human vessels, their sleek hulls gleaming with modified quantum weapons. The mysterious Void Walkers had emerged from their hidden dimension, bringing ships that seemed to bend space around them. Even species that Morrison had never heard of before now fought under the banner of freedom. "Admiral, final ship. Count is complete," reported Commander Alice Thompson from her position at the tactical station. She had taken over fleet operations after Dr. Jensen died in a hegemony raid on Deep Space Lab 7. "We have over 800 ships ready for battle, representing 43 different species." Morrison nodded grimly. It was the largest armada ever assembled against the hegemony, but intelligence reports suggested that Nexus Prime was defended by over 1,000 enemy vessels. The final battle would be costly, but it would also be decisive. President Lisa Martinez appeared on the communication screen from her mobile command ship, the UES Constitution. She had been forced to abandon Earth 6 months ago when the hegemony launched a desperate counterattack against humanity's homeworld. "Admiral Morrison, you have authorization to proceed with Operation Final Strike. A future of every free species in the galaxy depends on what happens in the next few hours." Morrison saluted the president, then turned to address his bridge crew. Many of them were veterans of the previous battles, survivors who had watched friends die and worlds burn. "All stations report ready for combat. This is the moment we've been fighting toward for 3 years. Today we end the hegemony's reign of terror forever." The Allied fleet began its approach to Nexus Prime, the ancient capital world where the hegemony had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. Morrison could see the massive defense platforms surrounding the planet, each one larger than a human city. Energy shields flickered around orbital stations that housed millions of hegemony civilians and military personnel. Captain Nina Foster commanded the heavy assault group, leading 200 ships toward the planet's northern pole. Her mission was to break through the outer defenses and create an opening for the reality cascade weapons that Dr. Thompson's team had developed. These new devices made the quantum bombs look primitive by comparison, capable of unraveling entire star systems. "Morrison to Foster," the Admiral transmitted. "Remember, we need to get close enough to deploy the reality cascade at the planet's core. Everything depends on precision timing." Foster's voice crackled back over the communication system. "Understood. Admiral, my people know what's at stake. We won't let you down." The battle began when the hegemony defense fleet moved to intercept the approaching Allied armada. Massive alien dreadnoughts emerged from behind the planet's moons, their weapons already charging with the purple energy that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia. But this time, humanity and its allies were ready. The Centauri Republic ships opened fire first, their beam weapons slicing through hegemony shields with devastating efficiency. The technology they had secretly developed with human scientists proved its worth as enemy vessels began exploding under concentrated fire. Morrison felt a fierce satisfaction watching the aliens who had murdered billions finally face an enemy that could match their firepower. "All ships execute attack pattern Alpha," Morrison ordered. "Break their formation and keep them busy while Foster's group reaches the planet." The space around Nexus Prime erupted into chaos as hundreds of ships engaged in desperate combat. Human vessels used their superior maneuverability to dart between the larger hegemony ships, targeting weapon systems and shield generators. Void Walker ships simply appeared and disappeared around enemy vessels, striking without warning before vanishing back into their dimensional hiding places. But the hegemony was not defenseless. Their orbital platforms began firing, sending massive energy beams that could destroy even the largest Allied ships with a single hit. The rebel cruiser Centauri Freedom exploded under concentrated fire, taking 400 crew members with her. The human destroyer U.E.'s Vengeance suffered a direct hit and began drifting helplessly toward the planet's gravity well. Captain Foster pushed her assault group through the enemy defenses, accepting terrible casualties to reach their objective. The hegemony threw everything they had at her ships, desperate to prevent the humans from reaching the planet's surface. Energy beams crisscrossed space like deadly lightning, and explosion after explosion lit up the darkness. Foster to Morrison. She transmitted as her flagship shook under enemy fire. "We're taking heavy losses, but we're almost in position. 30 seconds to reality cascade deployment." Morrison watched the tactical display with growing tension. Foster's 200 ships had been reduced to less than 50, and most of those were badly damaged. But they were close enough now, close enough to deploy the weapon that would end this war forever. Deep in the planet's crust, ancient hegemony computers detected the quantum disturbance as Foster's ships prepared to fire the reality cascade. Automated systems that had remained dormant for millennia suddenly activated, revealing the hegemony's final desperate gambit. "Admiral, we're detecting massive energy buildup from the planet's core," reported Commander Thompson. "It's some kind of weapon system, larger than anything we've ever seen." Morrison felt his blood turn cold as he realized what was happening. The hegemony was preparing to use their ultimate doomsday device, a weapon capable of destroying entire star systems. If they could not win this battle, they intended to take their enemies with them into oblivion. "Foster, abort the mission," Morrison ordered. "Pull back immediately." But Foster's response was not what he expected. "Negative, Admiral. My sensors show their weapon needs 4 minutes to charge. We can deploy the reality cascade in 90 seconds. We're going to finish this." Morrison watched helplessly as Foster's remaining ships dove toward the planet's surface, racing against time to deploy their weapon before the hegemony could fire theirs. Enemy fighters swarmed around the human vessels like angry insects, but Foster's pilots pressed on with the determination of people who knew they were already dead. "This is Captain Nina Foster to all ships," she broadcast on all frequencies. "For Admiral Turner, for Captain Brooks, for Amy Davis, and everyone we've lost. For Haven Falls and every world they burned. For the children who will never see their parents again. We do not forgive, and we do not forget." The reality cascade weapon fired just as the hegemony doomsday device reached full charge. For a moment, two incompatible forces struggled against each other in the planet's core. Then the reality cascade won, unraveling the quantum foundations that held Nexus Prime. Together, Morrison watched in awe and horror as the ancient capital of the hegemony simply ceased to exist. The planet did not explode or collapse, it just vanished, leaving empty space where moments before there had been a world. The orbital stations, the defense platforms, the millions of hegemony citizens, the doomsday weapon itself, all of it was erased from reality as if it had never existed. Foster and her entire assault group vanished with the planet, their sacrifice ensuring that the hegemony's final weapon could never be used. Morrison felt tears streaming down his face as he realized that humanity's greatest victory had come at the cost of some of their bravest people. The remaining hegemony forces, seeing their capital world erased from existence, began to surrender or flee in panic. 3,000 years of empire collapsed in a matter of hours as news of Nexus Prime's destruction spread throughout their territory. Subject species that had served the hegemony for centuries rose in rebellion, and the few remaining alien commanders found themselves fighting desperate battles across dozens of sectors. Over the next 6 months, Morrison led the Allied forces in a systematic campaign to eliminate every remaining hegemony stronghold. The reality cascade weapons proved devastatingly effective, turning entire star systems into empty voids. Where once mighty alien civilizations had ruled through fear and oppression, now there was only cosmic silence. Dr. Thompson supervised the final deployment of the reality cascade weapons, watching as the last major hegemony world disappeared into nothingness. "Admiral," she said quietly, "we've done it. Every major hegemony installation has been eliminated. The threat is ended." Morrison nodded, but he felt no joy in their victory. The cost had been enormous, both in human lives and in the moral weight of what they had done. Humanity had not just defeated their enemies, they had erased them from existence itself. President Martinez joined Morrison on the bridge of his flagship as they surveyed the empty space where the hegemony empire had once existed. "The galaxy is free," she said simply. "But at what cost?" Morrison thought about all the people who had died in this war. Admiral Turner ramming his ship into Vexnara Prime. Captain Foster leading her final charge against Nexus Prime. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the New Horizon, watching the stars through the main viewport. 50 years had passed since humanity was thrown out of the Galactic Council. 50 years since they were told they were too dangerous to live among the other races. Jake was only 35 years old, but he carried the weight of his entire species on his shoulders. The ship moved through empty space, far beyond the borders of Council territory. They had been searching for new worlds for months now, hoping to find something that could give humanity a fresh start. The crew was tired, and supplies were running low, but they kept going. They had no choice. Jake turned to look at his crew. Nina Rodriguez sat at the science station, her dark eyes focused on the scanner readings. She had been with him since the beginning of this mission. Pete Collins worked at the engineering console, making sure the ship kept running despite the constant strain of deep space travel. Amy Stone stood at the weapons station, always ready for trouble. They were good people, all of them. They deserved better than this endless wandering. The exile had been swift and brutal. Jake remembered the news broadcasts from Earth 50 years ago. Dr. Lisa Carter, Earth's ambassador to the Council, had tried her best to defend humanity. She had argued that humans were not naturally violent, that they only fought to protect what they loved. But the three ancient races that ruled the Council had already made up their minds. The Aldari, with their ability to read thoughts, claimed that human minds were filled with too much aggression. The Gentok, who shared a collective consciousness, said that humans were too individual and unpredictable. The Vextai, beings made of living crystal, declared that humanity's emotional nature made them unstable. The vote was unanimous. Humanity had 30 days to leave all their colonies in Council space and never return. Admiral Ryan Blake had led the evacuation fleets. Millions of humans had been forced to abandon their homes, their businesses, their entire lives. They had taken what they could carry and headed into the unknown regions of space. Some ships had gone in different directions, hoping to spread out and find new places to settle. Jake's group had been traveling for years now, moving further and further from everything they had once known. The silence on the bridge was broken by Nina's voice. "Commander, I'm picking up something strange on the long-range sensors." She looked up from her console with a puzzled expression. "It's a ship, but the readings are unlike anything I've seen before." Jake walked over to look at her screen. The sensor data showed a vessel drifting in space about 2 hours away at their current speed. It was large, maybe 3 times the size of the New Horizon, but it wasn't moving under its own power. "Any signs of life?" Nina adjusted the sensors and studied the results. "There are life signs, but they're very weak. Whatever happened to that ship, it wasn't good." She paused and looked at Jake. "Sir, the design doesn't match any council species we know about." Amy Stone spoke up from her station. Could be a trap, Commander. The Council might have sent someone to follow us. Jake considered this possibility. The Council had made it clear that humanity was not welcome anywhere in their territory, but they had never said anything about hunting them down in empty space. Still, it was better to be careful. Pete, how are our weapon systems? The engineer checked his readings. All systems are functional, sir. We're ready for anything. Jake made his decision. Set course for that ship. We'll approach slowly and keep our shields up. If it is a trap, we'll be ready for it. He paused and looked around at his crew. But if those are people who need help, we're not going to leave them to die out here. The New Horizon changed course and began moving toward the unknown vessel. As they got closer, the sensors revealed more details. The ship was badly damaged, with huge sections of the hull torn away. It looked like it had been through a terrible battle. Scorch marks covered most of the surface, and several areas showed signs of massive explosions. Nina's readings became clearer as they approached. Commander, I'm detecting 17 life signs aboard that ship. They're all very weak, probably injured. The ship's power systems are failing, and their life support won't last much longer. Jake felt the familiar weight of command pressing down on him. These were not humans. That much was clear from the ship's design. But they were living beings who needed help. After 50 years of wandering in exile, humanity had learned what it felt like to be alone and desperate. He could not turn away from others who might be feeling the same way. Open a communication channel, Jake ordered. All frequencies. Amy worked at her console for several minutes before shaking her head. I'm not getting any response, sir. Either their communication systems are down, or they don't recognize our signal format. Jake studied the damaged ship on the main screen. Whatever had attacked it had been incredibly powerful. The weapons that caused this kind of damage were beyond anything humanity had ever seen. Prepare a shuttle. Nina, Pete, you're with me. Amy, keep the ship ready to leave quickly if we run into trouble. The shuttle bay doors opened, and the small craft launched toward the alien vessel. As they flew closer, Jake could see just how massive the damage really was. The ship looked like it had been torn apart by some kind of wild animal. Deep gouges ran along the hull, as if something with enormous claws had ripped through the metal. Found a docking port that was still intact and managed to connect their shuttle. The atmosphere on the other side was thin but breathable for humans. Jake, Nina, and Pete put on their helmets anyway, just to be safe. They stepped through the airlock and into a world of darkness and destruction. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows on the walls as they made their way through the corridors. The ship's design was completely alien, with curved walls and surfaces that seemed to flow together like water. Everything was built for beings much taller than humans, with doorways that rose high above their heads. They found the survivors in what appeared to be a medical bay. 17 alien beings lay on beds that adjusted to their bodies. They were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large eyes that seemed to hold great intelligence. Their breathing was shallow, and many of them appeared to be unconscious. One of the aliens noticed the humans and tried to sit up. Nina quickly moved to help, and the being spoke in a language none of them understood. The words sounded like music, with tones that rose and fell in complex patterns. Pete activated his universal translator, a device that could learn new languages by analyzing speech patterns. After several minutes of listening to the alien speak, the device began to produce rough translations. The alien was trying to tell them something urgent. The words came through broken and unclear, but the message was terrifying. Something called the Devourers was coming. They consumed entire worlds, leaving nothing behind. The aliens' people, the Corvins, had tried to fight them but failed. Now they were running, hoping to warn others before it was too late. Jake felt A chill ran down his spine as he listened to the Corvin's story. The galaxy was facing a threat that could destroy everything, and humanity might be the only ones in a position to do something about it. The exile that had seemed like the end of everything might actually be the beginning of humanity's greatest purpose.